Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Follygon, and today we are going to be working on some ears. I'm going to be taking you kind of through my step-by-step process to create one ear here. And I'm trying out a new service today. It's called Restream, and I can stream through YouTube and Twitch. So if you're using either of those services, just go ahead and type something in the chat. Let me know you're here, and let me know that it's working. And I'm going to go ahead and start here on taking you through my process to create an ear. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. I am probably just going to start this like I do with everything, which is a sphere. So I just grab a sphere 3D. And I am probably, just to make sure that I am on the correct axis here, can check our transform there. Okay. So we are on the correct axis here, on X, facing forward. And I actually, let's keep this all in one tool instead of kind of separating it. So instead I'll just kind of append that sphere to this tool. So we have everything here, and I just have solo mode turned on there, or I can kind of turn off the visibility so that I don't have to see all those other ears at the same time. If you don't already, I would definitely recommend setting your solo mode to like the G key or something like that. Really helps with your workflow and speed, so that you can kind of hide and unhide things pretty quickly. And right before we get started here, give me 1 second. I just want to check for myself to make sure that everything is going here. So it looks like we're all cool on YouTube. And 1 second, I just want to check for myself. Twitch is now muted. If that happened, we would be getting a huge feedback loop. Hey there, just for players. How you doing? Thanks for stopping in. Let me mute this one as well. All these chats. So, Restream is being, looks like it's working pretty well. Awesome. So, let's go ahead and just start here. So, I have this image up here for this ear. This is just for reference for names, so we can kind of talk about what we're creating. And, you know, so we all know kind of what we're referencing. And then this is just a reference image that I pulled from Google Images. I mean, obviously, it's like a stock photo. It doesn't really matter. It's still pretty high-resolution image for what you get there. So I'm just going to go ahead and start here. So like I said, I typically start everything with a sphere, and I'm actually going to use this first sphere kind of as our base, as if it were a head or a skull, and I'm going to apply, guess what, another sphere on top of that sphere. So we can use this as our ear, and we will sculpt that. And I'm actually going to turn off symmetry. I was just using that to kind of orient ourselves on our plane there, make sure everything's in order. And from here, I'm just kind of split some stuff up, if we can select that, and make sure that I have all my selection brushes, which I do, double turned on, which is what I was looking for. And I'm just going to split hidden. So we got our base here, and now our what is going to be our ear attached down below. So we got that. And here are the other ears that I was kind of showing off before, if you didn't get a chance to see these. These are kind of what we're going to be, I wouldn't say referencing. You can definitely kind of use these as a reference for yourself and follow along with me. But I think it's going to be a lot more important for you to kind of follow along and copy real life. Because what I do is not going to be perfect, nowhere close. And copying another artist is typically not a great idea in terms of, you know, copying someone else's anatomy. You can do that if you feel confident in your kind of anatomical knowledge, but I would recommend that you pretty much always copy what you can see in life first before you try to copy someone else's art. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. So I'm just using a move brush, and I'm going to move this sphere. Actually, before we do that, crucial step, I'm just going to use my transpose tool. Click that white circle and get this a bit flatter. And from here, you can kind of see how this is applicable to a human head. We can kind of start aligning that. And if I had facial features here and everything else, I would attempt to line this up with the bottom of the nose and the top of the eye about, but you know, it's different for everybody. That's why I kind of like sculpting ears. There's a bit of variation in all of them, but for the most part, you know, they still have the same basic parts and shapes. So we will go ahead and just use our move brush, like I said, to kind of start blocking this out and getting it into position. And then once we kind of get the basic shape, the most basic silhouette, from there I'm going to use our mask pen, and I'm going to subdivide this a couple times just so I can get a more clear mask, and go ahead and start blocking out that inner ear shape. And if you are trying to figure out like how to make this basic shape, if you've done this in the past, what I like to do is I kind of like to make a really fat number 9 here, and that kind of gets you this entire shape. And then for this, it's like a number 9 with kind of a bit of a mushroom here, but I'm kind of blending it all together, and that's not a huge deal because we are going to kind of go through and correct a lot of this stuff as we go. So I'm just going to use my transpose tool, push it in a tad, and we can start dynameshing. So I'm just using the default resolution, 128. We don't want our subdivision levels. This is fine for our purposes right now. And we can go ahead and turn our sphere back on. Maybe we want to move this up a bit, just so it's in line with everything. A sphere ear, that's going to be a thing, probably. Just assigned my G keybind to the solo mode, which I'm clicking always. Thanks for the tip. Yeah, it's like you have the F key to like frame on your mesh, and then you have G right there. It's awesome. I love it. I use it all the time. It's probably like my favorite shortcut. Hey Reggie, how's it going? Thanks for stopping in. And let's see here. Sorry, haven't been looking at the chat. Helion, long time no see, as in last stream. Thanks for stopping in. Live, all renderings, and start ZBrush. Lives. you gotta pause all the renderings and come watch the stream. Yes, awesome. Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate it. Okay, so the one thing I don't have here is actually a reference of an ear from the front view. Maybe you can look at mine. But let's not do that. So I was looking at some ears here earlier. If you search ear female, it's like the second image. That's the image that I have right here in my spotlight reference there pulled in. So we can kind of try to find an ear female from the front view. I can't see my keyboard, and I never took a typing class, so excuse my terrible typing. So essentially what I'm looking for is there's some weird pics in here. That's not what we're looking for at all. So essentially I just want to show you kind of the basic silhouette and shape of what's going on here. And she has some, this actually isn't what, actually this is a lot closer to what you would expect. So if we go back to our reference here, the anti-helix, this inner part here, this inner ridge of your ear, typically sticks out further than the back of your ear, which I believe is just called the helix. Yes. So as you can see here, her anti-helix is sticking out a bit farther than her anti-helix. And then if you look at this is a little bit different where you can actually see inside of her ear. And this might just be something with like the focal length of the camera. It looks like it's pretty flat in perspective. So maybe that's the case. And then this, I'm sure her hair is like weighing her ears forward. So that looks like the same person. But this is a lot closer to what you would kind of see on average in most people. So the shape here, even though I don't have a reference, you can maybe look in a mirror or pull up some more images for yourself. But I've done this a few times. So it's more of like this kind of S-curve from the front. And then from there, what we're going to do is pull our anti-helix on the inside over top of the helix. And we don't have enough resolution to do that quite yet, which is totally cool. But just give us some time here and we will get there. So, doing great, Reggie. Awesome. Thanks for coming in, man. Okay, so what do we want to do next? I'm just kind of going over this with a smooth brush, and I would actually be pretty careful doing that because your smooth is pretty powerful, especially at low resolutions like I have it here. So if I want to get rid of some of these abnormalities in the geometry, I can just kind of lightly brush over that. And then from the back, I want to use a mask pen and start masking out some of this part here so that I can kind of connect it to what would be the head. And the ear is not just kind of connected at the base here like that small little bit. It has some skin and connection going there. And that was a quick save. That's good. That's what we like to see. Alright, so just going to transpose that towards the head, is what I'll call it for now. And you can see that I might have cleared my mask a little bit too much there, which is fine. Also, this would be a bit more flat here. So let's go ahead and just kind of block that in a tad, just so I can see what's going on. And like I was saying, so this part here, we'll probably have to correct some of that as we go. But we don't have enough geometry, so I'm just gonna roughly double our Dynamesh resolution here, and can kind of start blocking in some of our shapes. So you have a lot going on in an ear if it's your first time making an ear, and if you've never done it before, it can be a bit overwhelming. You're like, there's so many like overlapping and like connecting shapes, like this tucks under this part, and like, you know, the anti-helix, it sticks out a little bit over the helix in the back, and then it tucks up into the top of the helix there. So like there's just a lot of stuff going on, but once you kind of understand the basic construction, it starts to get pretty easy. So don't feel like overwhelmed if you're looking at it at first. It's definitely kind of like a one step at a time kind of deal. So, you know, what I also like about sculpting ears, especially for people that are kind of just new to ZBrush or new to sculpting, is that it's something that's relatively simple. You know, a lot of the time people start off in ZBrush and they're like, I want to make a character. Like, let's make a character. I'm so excited. Let's do it. And you're just like, whoa, slow down there, cowpoke. Maybe try something a little bit easier first. So I recommend like trying to sculpt a really nice ear or a nose. Noses are always fun. I like sculpting some noses. Or something like that that's small and simple. Maybe like a finger. Don't even try to do a full hand right off the bat. Maybe you can. Maybe you feel confident enough to, and that's awesome. But I would personally say, you know, just take a chill pill. Try something like an ear so you can practice some of these tools and figure it all out, and we can go from there. Is my water bottle, aka my Contigo, filled and ready? Yes, of course. It's always filled and ready. So we got that. I filled it up right before I started the stream. I was like, oh crap, need the water. But thank you for looking out for my voice, my throat. So I'm going to use a back face masking on my move brush here to kind of pull this shape into what will be our earlobe. And what's great about Spotlight is that if you want, you can take your image and overlay it over top of your sculpt there and kind of turn down the opacity if you so desire, but I do not so desire, at least right now. So I'm going to hold off on that. And apologies there, just making sure that image was not overlaid over top of my face on the stream. Alright, and I'm gonna do that from this view as well, just to give it a tad bit of thickness. And we can Dynamesh again. And sorry if you guys hear the dogs barking in the background, nothing I can do about that one. So let's continue to block out some of these shapes. So I'm just using my version of the Clay Tubes brush. It's very, very similar to the Clay Tubes brush. It has a few things that are are a little bit different about it, and I won't go into the technical details, but if you want that brush, you can get that on my Gumroad page as well. So you can get all of these brushes on there. Alright, so let's go ahead and start to adjust some of this shape so that we can kind of fit this silhouette a bit more. And the helix has a bit of, and excuse me, my contact is super dry right now. But the hood of the helix here has like this hood shape that kind of like overlaps, and you kind of have like a bit of a cavity up under there. So there's some concavity that we kind of can get here with our move back face again. And as I pull that down, it's not going to do exactly what we want, and we could mask off that inner portion, but I'm going to be kind of messing around in there so much that that's not really gonna help us too much. So I'm just going to keep going here, make some changes as quick as I can, and see where we end up. We can start to also get some of this shape in here to separate the helix and the anti-helix, and then they kind of start to blend together as you get to the earlobe, or the lobule as it's technically called, thanks to virtualmedicalcenter.com for that one. So let's go ahead and grab my sharp soft edge brush. This is kind of like a damn standard brush. If you've ever downloaded this brush and played with it before, you love dogs. Well, I love dogs too, but I don't love when they're barking when I'm trying to record stuff, which is cool. They're nice. So this sharp soft edge brush, it kind of works like a damn standard brush, which comes default with ZBrush. But this one I like a tad bit more. It's not quite as harsh of a cut or dig into your mesh, so you can get some nice shapes with that. I like that brush quite a bit, and I use that all the time. So we want to start kind of pulling these in together to kind of form this shape, and I can use my standard brush to start pushing in around where the ear canal will be for that tunnel, which is called, I believe, your auditory meatus. Yeah, there it is, your external auditory meatus. It's a fun name. That's probably why I remembered it. So we can kind of start getting in that ear canal and pushing that in just to kind of block that out. There's a bit of a slope kind of going down from these shapes here. And it might just be the lighting, but it looks like it like wraps around here, and it does a little bit if you look at this image. I would say that this one is actually pretty accurate, pretty accurate rendering of an ear as far as that goes. And even if we want, from this point, I can subtool mirror this across here, and if I want, I can come over here and work on this side. But unfortunately, our sphere is not the same over there. So let's mirror our sphere. Ruh-roh. It got confused. That's okay. It does that sometimes, where it mirrored the actual ear. We won't worry about it. Instead, I'll just quickly trim dynamic that, just like I did on the other side. Do the exact same. Roughly the same. No big deal if it's not. Okay, so if we want to maybe use this side as more of a reference, if we're trying to, just based on the way it's oriented, it can be a little difficult to tell sometimes. So right now I'm not worried about how messy my ear is looking. It looks pretty messy right now. The geometry is kind of all over the place, but that's kind of the beauty of ZBrush and using stuff like Dynamesh. You can kind of forget about worrying about geometry and all these things. You don't have to worry about that till later, or not at all if you don't want to. So ZBrush is first and foremost a program for sculpting digitally with polygons, thankfully. So let's go ahead and continue blocking in some more shapes. So again, pretty much I've used the clay tubes brush for almost all of this. And it's my kind of go-to sculpting brush. It's kind of like my standard brush. I think you get the USAC. Hey, how's it going? Thanks for coming in. So the clay tubes brush is kind of like, you know, they call this one the standard brush, but I think the clay tubes brush should really be the standard brush. It's the one that I use the most, and I think it's one that a lot of sculptors use the most. So let's go ahead and keep playing with some of these. So I'm just kind of going around my reference because I've done this many times. I kind of know, I wouldn't say that I have like a formula for sculpting an ear, but I know kind of where I need to dance around my sculpt and mess with stuff at certain levels. So I'm not, you know, I don't always do this the exact same way, which is, I think, the way it should be if you're trying to sculpt. But, you know, just kind of play with some areas, and then as you start to get closer to your shape that you're attempting to represent digitally here in your clay, that you can kind of start moving around a bit. So as I kind of work more and I'm feeling better about this shape of the helix here, I can kind of start maybe going down here to the lobe as I notice that it's not the exact shape that I'm looking for. So it's good to not spend a lot of time in any one particular area. So stuff like this, as you can see there, it's like really dirty, and that might bother some people, but for the most part, I just like leave that stuff in. I don't even think twice about it. Just it's not going anywhere, and truthfully, so you know, it's not a huge deal. You can fix it later. And most of those things tend to work themselves out as you go. As long as you kind of, like I said, don't just hover all in one place while you're trying to sculpt. So I am creating the back of what will be the plunger portion of the ear. It's just kind of the ridge of the helix back here. So we can start to pull this out, and then from there I can start to work on pulling my anti-helix out over top of my helix from the front view. So that's kind of what I was showing you in that image on Google Images before. USAC said, it's been a while. It's been like a week. We streamed last week, and I just released a video on Wednesday. Come on. So, you know, this is consistency right here. We haven't done this too often lately, but like I said, hey, we're gonna be streaming a lot more. I've been working on the ZBrush Quick Start course with most of my time that I have available to me, and that is going to be coming very soon. And then as soon as that is kind of, you know, starts rolling out, there's gonna be more streams on top of that. So I'd be excited for it. So that is the current plan. We will see. So more stuff back here. It's pretty ugly, but you know, it's the back of the ear, so it's not seen quite as much. And just real quick here, I can pull up, you know, one of these ears so you can see kind of what we're going for. If you guys missed the beginning portion, you know, I have 3 ears here that I just kind of ripped off of old sculpts that I had done. So you can kind of see some of this shaping. This is probably the best representation of the helix in the back here to get that plunger shape. And this is even a bit thick here. So if you have a camera or a phone or camera phone or whatever, you can just take a picture of the back of your ear and look at it like that. It's pretty hard to find some good references online. So I like to kind of take pictures and get my own reference a lot of the time here. You can kind of see how these portions of the anti-helix flow up and blend together. And then there's this bit of fossa in here, and you can see that there in the representation as well. So let's go back to this guy. We can kind of start to play with all of this. And we're getting a bit, I think, too close to the concha. That is not what I thought that was called, but we can kind of increase this gap here. A good way to do that, I'm using the mask lasso. You can hold control, come up here, select mask lasso, and then from there you can kind of mask off the portion that you don't want to move, and then start to edit and make changes like so. And you could even pull this down so we get a nice helix curve in there. And now we got a lot more room in here to play around, so we can kind of start doing that as well. And we will get to this kind of hooded shape in the helix as we go, but just kind of need some time to clean up the rest of this. Like I said, don't work on anything too long, just any one part too long. You want to move around. And if you are at a point right now where you're like, if you're following along, and if you are following along and you do end up sculpting an ear, definitely tweet it at me on Twitter, at Follygon, just my same username here. Go ahead and tweet it at me. I'd love to see your guys' ear and give you some tips or pointers if you need any. So if you're looking at your mesh here, USAC, which one? Correct, and I missed that one. You did miss the last stream, that's right. But you can watch it, it's still on my channel if you haven't seen it. So if you're looking at your mesh here, and it's looking pretty dirty, you can always, what I like to do is come on down here and ZRemesh very low. And I just did 0.1, which is the lowest possible value. And, you know, we can get a pretty good base from that to work with. And that actually looks pretty clean. And that's just a quick one click, one slide, one click. So down in ZRemesher, I just set my target poly count to as low as it would go, which is 0.1, clicked ZRemesh, and this is the result that we get from that. And you can kind of see, so like this looks really dirty, but you know, all the forms are in here. So all the stuff that is happening in here is kind of what we're looking for. And even though it's dirty and messy, it doesn't matter because we can always fix the dirtiness. Like you want to start as, I'm kind of a believer that you want to start rough, get messy, get dirty, so you can kind of see what's going on with your mesh. In my opinion, it helps. It helps you be able to see what's going on more, and you don't get attached to what you're working on so much when it looks like garbage. So just keep it messy. And let's see, asking, will you save this live stream as a video? Absolutely. No, I would not take that away from you, people. Yeah, so all live streams that I do go up on my YouTube channel roughly 24 hours after I do a live stream. So it takes a bit of time for it to process and do all the YouTube junk, especially if it's like 2 hours long. It can take a while to process. So it will go up on the channel like roughly 24 hours or so after I stream. And I say 24, but typically it's faster than that, so you can have that to watch this. I also have a video on my channel called How to Sculpt an Ear in ZBrush, something like that, where I kind of do the same thing, but it's not in real time like I'm doing right now. So I do speed up through some parts, but if you're looking for even more knowledge on sculpting like a nose, ear, mouth, eyes, head, there's an entire playlist on my channel where you can kind of find some tutorials for that stuff. And then when I release my ZBrush Quick Start course, I'll be going more in depth on some of that stuff as well. So I'm excited for that. I hope you guys are, and I'll have more information on that guy soon. Awesome. So let's go ahead and start working on getting the kind of transition between all of these parts. So I've kind of like started to block in everything. We can turn on our perspective, and we can actually start to pull out the anti-helix as well, so that overlaps the helix from the front view like I was saying. and we can kind of start getting this overlapping that is going to occur between those shapes. And I'm just going to put this fossa back in because I blended it to kind of correct some stuff before, and that's fine. We'll mess with that more later. But I'm going to turn off my perspective because I'm going to use mask lasso, and mask lasso and perspective are not the best of friends. So we'll do this, and that should be pretty good for what we need. I'm just going to clear that mask by control tapping on my mesh or clicking. Nice ears. Thank you, Gabe. I appreciate it. Not done yet. Got a lot more to do. So we'll pull these guys out some here. Control click on your canvas. Flip your mask around. And then from here, the helix kind of, again, has this S-curve that I was talking about before. And typically it's not too prominent. So you can, if you want to try to exaggerate it at first and then pull it back, that typically works pretty well for me. And start to work on, like I said, these transitions between forms. So let's go ahead and do some of that. But before we do that, let's go ahead and remesh down to a lower subdiv. So I'm just going to turn off Dynamesh there and ZRemesh at around 1K polys. And that was pretty good. That's pretty close to what I was looking for. Still have most of our forms in there, but you know, if I subdivide or smooth here, you can see that we're getting closer to where we want. And the problem is, if I would do, you know, all the way down to 0.1, we start to lose some of the forms that we put in there, and we want to keep all that work that we just did. So we'll try 1,000 polys, and because I have 2 in here, you know, rough estimation is that it's closer to like 4K polys right now. So that's not anything to worry about, but just keep in mind that if you are going for a specific target poly count with ZRemesher, it's not typically too accurate. It likes to give you more polygons than you ask for most of the time. So if I did 0.1, that is 100 polys, but it'll give you like 1,000 most of the time. So let's subdivide, and we can subdivide a couple times here. If you're not sure when to subdivide, my rule of thumb is only subdivide when you need the resolution. So for most of the time, you know, just chill out, wait on it, and if you're not sure, play around on that lower subdivision level longer if you can. And from there, you'll kind of start to realize, yes, I do need more resolution, and that's when you can kind of do that. It's something that comes with practice, and you can really tell when someone doesn't know when to do that. You know, meshes look pretty dirty and messy, kind of like the Dynamesh model I had just a minute ago. And they can kind of end up looking like that through the entire process. And you don't really want that. You don't want it to be messy the entire time. You eventually want to start cleaning up your forms. And you're probably like looking at me sculpting right now, and you're like, you're using the clay tubes brush again. You're just going to get it all dirty. I know what I'm doing, guys. I've done this before. Look, we can clean it. I just like my clay tubes brush. It's my buddy. It's my 3D guy. It's my friend. It's my most used brush. So this the anti-helix, as it kind of comes down into here, you can kind of see like in this this image, there's like this hard cutoff and transition, but it's not. It more so kind of like blends in. It like fades in, and I have mine going a bit too deep down there, and also a little bit too strong, like sticking out too far is what I mean by that. So I'm gonna try to correct that here with my move brush from the side. So I'm still, like, even at this stage, worried about primary forms and just getting the basic shape of my mesh and the basic shape of this ear. I am not, and you can't see where I'm gesturing with my hand, can you? So I'll point with my mouse, my pen. So I'm just worried about getting the basic shape here. So I'm worried about stuff like the angle that the ear is back. Like, do I have that off pretty well? Okay, maybe mine needs to be angled back a tiny bit more, but I think it's pretty close. Getting some of these forms in here, as the helix wraps around. I haven't done any of the hood kind of shape up here, but as I do that, I can kind of start to, push this up a bit because I have mine down a little bit too far, and start to mess with all this stuff. And like, this is a bit too thick in here, and we can mess with that as we go as well. So I'm worried about kind of just getting the basic shape of this thing. That's pretty much all sculpting really is. And the sooner you kind of figure that out, the better, because a lot of people like to kind of just rush ahead to the details and stuff. But in my opinion, it's really all just kind of about these basic shapes and being able to represent those. And a good way to kind of, if you don't know if you're representing the shape well, you can, like I said, take your image and overlay it over your sculpt. That's one really good way. And another good way is that you can grab your light source and move it around. And as you do that, you can kind of see some things that need to... It's kind of like if you're painting or drawing digitally, you can flip your canvas, and then it's like looking at it for the first time. If you do this with a light and, switch it around, all of a sudden it's like looking at your ear almost for the first time, where you're like, okay, well, this is a little bit of a steep transition, so I'll probably have to come back through here and build that back up. And that looks, it'd probably be better if I just masked it and pushed it in. But the point is, as you like move your light around, you're gonna see some of these changes and kind of be able to understand that your basic forms, your most primary shapes and forms here, like this, it's just a tube that wraps around. But even looking at it from this light, I can see like, oh, this isn't as clean as it could be. And I didn't notice it before, but as I move that light source around and see these different changes and things, it really does help. So I would highly recommend that as you're working on something, I'm not saying like every few minutes or anything, but like every couple hours, if you're working on something for a while, just move that light source around. It makes a world of difference for what you're working on. USAC, you're already leaving us. You just came in here. All right. Well, the live stream will be up on my channel tomorrow, so no worries. And Gabe, also, thanks for coming. Awesome. So, look in here, what we want to do. And 1 second here. Let me correct this. All right. Cool. So this is a bit thick. This doesn't have the hood shape that we're looking for. This shape is, more close to this reference than this one, just because we need that hood shape to kind of be able to tuck it in there, as well as get the kind of under cut that's happening up through here, so up through in this area. And we kind of want to get that in here as well, a bit of an undercut, and I can do that a lot of different ways, and we'll play around with some of the ways that we can do that. And looking around, the lobe can use a bit more finagling. The your what's called your tragus or what is it? Tragus. I don't know how to say it. This part, this guy, he's a bit bulky, so we'll probably want to slim him down as well. So all these things that I'm just kind of constantly referencing between these two images of my sculpt and my ear here. And kind of start to mess with those few things as we go, as well as rotate around. It's nice if you're working on two things like this. I just have it mirrored. You can kind of start to work on the other side. If one side is taking up all your time and you just need a fresh perspective, you can always mirror your ear and come on over here and start doing this as well. So let's try to get this like hooded shape. You know, at this point we could even say like, oh, our ear's done, but let's go a bit further. You know, we can do some more stuff here. We can get some more work in, some more mileage. So I'm just messing with that, trying to, you know, get a nice clean curve here. If you're looking at it, and it's not great, but we will mess with it more as we go, like everything in time. So like I said, let's do this helix portion, this outside loop, and we are looking at kind of this shape here mainly. It's got this big undercut up in there, this hooded shape, which is really cool. And down here it's got it's a bit inflated, so you know we can actually use our inflate brush. I like to turn lazy mouse on with inflate and turn it down really low. The inflate brush is like super strong most of the time, so I'm not a huge fan of using the inflate brush too generously. I like to be frugal with it. So if we want to do that, we can kind of mask off this area and try sculpting on it from this angle as well to get that bit of inflate in this shape. And if you look here as this kind of wraps around, so ours is not the correct shape, and we will correct that as we go. Whoops. Can kind of start to block that in so we don't forget. So as this goes here, you know, this transition is a bit too sharp here, so we would maybe want to, I'm just using a trim dynamic brush there to kind of soften that shape as we go in. So we'll pull that in and soften it and get a bit more rounded here. So I'm just kind of knocking off these edges, kind of beveling them with my trim dynamic, and that'll get us a lot closer to what we're looking for. And we can see that, you know, this isn't exactly there yet, so let's mess with it a bit more. Taking that inflate brush in here this time, kind of trying to get that gap. Right now what I'm doing is, instead of using smooth, and it looks like my camera might, oh no it didn't, I thought my camera froze. So instead of using smooth, which is holding shift and then smoothing on your mesh, it's pretty strong of an effect. So what you can do is hold shift and start smoothing, and then when you start smoothing, if you let go of shift, it does kind of a, to me it's more of like an averaging of geometry, where the smoothing is like very strong and destructive. So like if you have something that comes to a point and you smooth it, that point will like go down into the mesh. But if you use this alternate type of smoothing where you shift, let go of shift to smooth it, like I was doing here, the point will go down a little bit, but the rest of the mesh will also like average out and come up to meet it. So I use that for stuff all the time. This is a pretty good use of it here to kind of get this gap in here a bit more, and now at this point we can kind of mask that back off. And again, this is why I don't keep perspective on while I'm trying to mask stuff most of the time, just because that kind of thing happens. So I'm going to try move with back face masking, and I'm going to change my mind immediately because that is not the result I wanted. Just looking at my mesh, it needs to go in quite a bit more here, so let's do that. Make sure we have the right brush selected as well, and we can increase the strength on that just a tad. Again, that inflate brush is pretty strong. Drop down our size. So alt stroke on the inner portion there, and then just a normal kind of inflate stroke on the outside here. And make sure we don't get any. And you know what? Ears actually have like these abnormal kind of, they're not like perfectly S-curved and beautiful, but if I'm like working on something and trying to get those basic shapes, I like to keep things like as pristine for that kind of stuff as I can, and then like later down the road I can add like what I would call asymmetry to this ear, like not essentially breaking up it's like beautiful curves that I created and spent all this time on. So like if I'm like this curve here, it's pretty nice. It's not amazing, but like if you're looking at hers, like there's a bit of you know, it's not quite as clean as what I have here. We can mess with all that and play around with that, and that just kind of takes practice to recognize that stuff and actually be able to replicate it. So definitely don't feel bad if you can't. Sculpting's hard. Like, people don't talk about too often how difficult ZBrush is and how hard it is to, you know, get these kind of things. It just takes practice. It just takes a lot of practice, and if I can do it, if I can do it, then anybody can do it. So don't feel bad if you can't get to this level quite yet. Like I said, just takes time. So we'll keep going here. I'm just lightly trying to round some of this stuff out with my trim dynamic brush. Don't want to forget about the back of the ear. It still exists. It's still back here. Another way you can kind of get a fresh perspective on your ear is to turn it upside down. Works really well with faces. It kind of like throws stuff in your face and points out all your mistakes immediately, which is always super fun to have happen to you. So let's kind of start. Well, before I build up the shape on top, it's probably going to be a better idea for me to cut in. And the reason that is, let me look over here. Once you kind of pull this shape down and out there, it's going to be kind of difficult to get up under there. So let's kind of start by getting up under and then pull out over top. So let's, I'm just using my sharp soft edge brush. It's pretty much a damn standard brush. That's what I would recommend for doing something like this. And I just have lazy mouse like all the way up to try to really get in there and get a clean curve. And now let's what do we want to use here? We can try the inflate brush to really get in there. Works pretty well most of the time. So that's what we were using down here to kind of get that shape. You kind of want to, you know, the standard brush works for stuff like this, but if you're going to use that, I would recommend that you turn the strength down on that really low, kind of like I have on my inflate brush. My Z intensity is at 6 right now, so it's way down there. I don't actually know what the default is because this brush is slightly different than the normal inflate brush. So working on that, we can kind of start to pull out this shape of the hood on top. And we have a pretty decent gap going on in there for the anti-helix to slide up under. So let's go ahead and try to do that. So there's a couple ways we could go about this part now. One way is to mask it off and try to sculpt the parts that we need only. And that might work. And that's probably what I'll do. This can be a bit of a difficult shape to kind of mask out. Could take some time. I just want to try to get this shape really up in there. Another way we could do it is to mask it out, but also create a poly group, so we have some selection groups that we can, you know, hide and unhide some stuff. It would almost be a good idea, I think, to kind of split these two pieces into separate parts, but that would probably take more work than we want, but it would result in a lot cleaner, better sculpt. So if I was like trying to sculpt the best ear that I could and have like the highest level of quality and realism, that's probably what I would do here in this case. And the reason is it just gives you so much more control over your mesh. The more parts you have, the better, in my opinion. The more subtools, essentially. So I'm just using the mask lasso again here, and then what you can do after you get that is grab your mask pen and kind of start to clean up some of this mask if you want. It shouldn't matter too much though, because we're just using it for, as long as it's like clean up here, you should be good. That's probably close enough for our poly group. And what I did there was I just pressed Control W on my keyboard. Control W will mask whatever you have, or I'm sorry, will poly group whatever you have masked. But in the case of not having anything masked, it will just poly group everything that is visible. I use that shortcut all the time. It's very helpful. So now that we got this poly grouped, we can start playing around with some stuff. I'm going to use move and backface masking on. This is probably one of my favorite kind of powerful little tool secrets in ZBrush that you don't really hear a ton about when you're just starting out. Backface masking is a godsend for, it's just so many things. And if you want to find that, I think it's in your brushes, your brush palette auto masking. So if we alt click this, we can find out where it is. So brush, auto masking, backface mask. So that's where you can find that and play around with it. I pretty much use it on all of my brushes by default. I really don't know why it's not the default to be used. Because if you're sculpting on something that's thin, your brush will like sculpt on the opposite side of your mesh as well. So if you have like two surfaces that are really close, so like this is kind of thin here, and if I sculpt it on this side, it would bleed over to the other side. And like, why would you want that? That seems pretty dumb. So I like to keep it on for pretty much most things, and then turn it off when I don't need it. Sub the move brush, I pretty much keep it off all the time and turn it on only when I need it. So let's mess with this shape a bit more. Start to play with that. So we're starting to get that hood shape. That's awesome. Remask that, and we can inflate some of this area so it's more rounded, but you can see like I have this, like you can see the way the light is hitting this, that there's a crease there. And if I move my light, I can probably make it more obvious up here. So yeah, you can see that highlight on the ridge. That's definitely not what we want here. So that's why moving your light is important as well. Start to actually understand the surface of your sculpt. And just being able to interpret your surface and understand what's going on is very, very powerful and very, very necessary if you want to become a good sculptor. So looking at this from the front, don't forget to rotate your 3D model around. You know, you want to look at it from multiple views, and all of a sudden you're working on something for a really long time, and then you spin it around and you're like, what did I do? What the heck? So, you know, we got some warbly unevenness here. Just a quick fix, drop down to a low subdiv and correct that with our move brush. So all these things are just, you know, there's stuff that you kind of learn from practice and experiencing all these problems yourself. So I know I'm trying to talk about as many of these kind of issues, these common things that come up as I sculpt, but I'm not even hitting all of them, I'm sure, and I'm sure you guys are running into problems that I am not as well. So, you know, the best educator is practice in this case. So our earlobe, he's looking a bit chunk. He's a chunky monkey. We can thin that out maybe with a trim brush or something like that. I, however, am going to use our transpose tool. So So come on down here, transpose line. I have move on, and I'm just gonna hold shift and pinch it in. Look at that. That was easy, right? Awesome. And we can adjust it even more if we wanted to from here, maybe with our trim brush or something like that. All right, so let me adjust some more stuff that I'm kind of picking up on and noticing as we work. Guys, we are gonna make the best darn ear we can. That's not true. We'd be here a while. We'd be like messing with fiber mesh to attempt to get like hairs on the inside of the ear and stuff like that. And that's grody. Like, I don't have ear hairs like that. I probably do. I probably got a lot. But we'll just do the basic kind of sculpt here, and we won't worry about high density detail or anything like that. We can maybe mess with that a little bit just so I can show you guys some techniques for that kind of stuff, but overall we won't go too much into that. This is the stuff that is the important part. You know, I was talking about details earlier, and you learn the most from your sculpt in the first, well, I forget the analogy, but anyway, the first like primary, like the first 33%, I would say, of your sculpt, the primary forms, like if you break it into 3 parts, you know, primary forms, secondary, and tertiary, like the high density detail. People are like rushing to get to that. That first 33%, that first 1/3, is the most important stage, and it's where you learn 90% of what you need. So like if you only sculpt everything 1/3 of the way, you're fine. You're good. You're good. Which is why I recommend doing like such dirty sculpts all the time as practice, because that first initial part, that 33%, is where you learn 90% of everything you need to know, and that's where you get all your practice. Those last 2/3 of work, you know, going into you know, less so getting like these secondary forms to blend together. This is like very important stuff, but like those high density details and stuff that you're attempting to accomplish can really you're really not going to end up learning too much from that. And that's why it's so difficult in the beginning, is because in the beginning of a sculpt is what I'm saying, and in the beginning of when you're just kind of starting out. But in the beginning of sculpt, it's so difficult because that's the hard part. That's like where you're working out your brain the most. That's where all the hardships come, right? So getting all that down and kind of learning how to stay in that area for as long as you can is going to help you learn a lot more. Prove lack of ear hair. I can't look. The camera is pretty garbage. It's like, it says HD 1080p, but really it means garbage 1080, just 10. Like there's like no pixels in this thing. It would not be able to see ear hairs. I'll post a pic tonight on my Twitter of some ear hairs, or lack thereof, after, you know, I remove them all. So back to the inflate brush. Trying to really kind of get that that cut in there, as well as build up around here. And mine, if you look at my ear right now, it's very round, very clean. Rowan, Mr. Farley, I'll call you, because I don't know how to, you just threw a curveball my way. I don't know how to say that. But thank you, appreciate it, and welcome to the stream. So I don't even remember what I was talking about. The inflate brush, or actually what I was talking about was the curve of this, that's right. So let's try to get this a bit closer to this person's ear so we can, you know, get it more accurate with our reference here. So if I was to line this up and do a very poor job, let's opaque it. So let's try to line that up as best as we can. So we have, you know, we have a pretty good representation in here, just from me keeping it off to the side. But you can see here that, like I said, this guy down here, the what's it called, the tragus, is a bit too thick, and you can see that is still true. And we can now, as you see, that you can see the hood of her ear. This is my mesh underneath this yellow. We kind of need to get this a bit closer to that shape if we can. And then as well, we want to get that a bit straighter there. You can see how ours is curved, and we can get this hood to come down a bit more there as well. So being able to interpret your reference in the images that you're looking at is a very, very difficult skill to get. It comes with practice, just like everything else, but it's very important. And the more time you spend kind of looking at your reference, interpreting your reference, comparing it to what you're doing, the better that your final kind of sculpt or drawing or whatever you're doing is going to turn out. So let's start with this tragus, as we call him, because he is the part that is sticking out the most. And you know, in truth, it might not be that it's too thick, it might just be that it's too forward, because of course this kind of blends into the head as we get there. So maybe we want to get that more flush with the side of our sphere head, and we can start to make some changes here. So I'm just gonna mask lasso that guy and use my move brush just a tad, kind of start pushing that in. And I'll even separate these two parts with the mask lasso so that I can thin it out even a tad more. And our symmetry got turned off. That's okay. We haven't been really sculpting on that side anyway. So you can see there that it's a little off. But you know what we can do? We can fix that. So if you're ever working on this, and if you're working on the one on the left, you're a lucky duck, because you can delete your lower subdivision levels and you can click mirror and weld, which is, I think, down in your deformation palette. No, I'm sorry, it's actually in your geometry palette. So geometry, modify, topology, mirror and weld. So that works if you're going from left to right, but if you're going from right to left, what I recommend doing is deleting hidden. So I just selected that, delete hidden, and subtool master, mirror, and we'll mirror that way from right to left. And if you want, you can get your subdivs back by reconstructing your subdivision levels in your geometry palette. And boom, we're back. Awesome. So pretty easy, pretty quick. It's a common issue that occurs to me quite often. You know, I just accidentally turn off. Well, most of the time when I use it, I actually just delete the other symmetrical part just because it's in the way. And if I'm trying to rotate around this, that happens where I'm trying to look at like the back of this, but I can't freaking see it because this other stupid ear is in the way. So it just makes it easier to work on stuff sometimes. So let's use our inflate brush, which I already have selected. Good job, Ben. We'll push in here a little bit. I'm trying to round this out as well, and it's a bit of excuse me, it's a bit of inflate there, so inflate it, right? I'll turn off lazy mouse just so I can get the shape that I want. And we'll inflate up to here as well, so you can see that there's like this ridge here. And we'll turn lazy mouse back on. So I want that kind of following this pattern. Make sure that dynamic isn't on. Okay, I was experiencing a little bit of lag there, but I think we're good. There we go. Start to get that shape a little bit better in there. All right. Prove your lack of ear hair. I demand it. I'm just listening to the dogs bark. Just hanging out. Alright, so hopefully this has been helpful. Just me kind of talking through all this. We'll continue to do some stuff here as we go. Excuse me. So, get that tragus closer to our reference. That was our job. We're getting there. We can turn our sphere back on. And we can still give it some more work. He's still pretty thick. But maybe blending that with the sphere would help a lot. It's also going to help us a lot to get the helix here kind of overlaid, like it's coming out a bit more there, as well as down here. And I think once we do those two things, we can go on to messing with the shape of our anti-helix and getting all that a bit closer. And I'm noticing, as I'm just kind of talking and looking here, as the anti-helix comes down through here, the shape is still off, so we want to kind of pull this up and swell it. So that probably wouldn't take too long here. So we can go ahead and kind of just give that a bit of a bump there. And we can also start thinking about the negative, the concavity that's on the inner portion of the anti-helix there, so we can get that as well. We can use our inflate brush for that. Now when I sculpt, like, don't think that I'm sitting here, you know, sculpting this and trying to use as few brushes as possible. This is like what I normally use to sculpt. Like I use 5-6 brushes on average, like in total, for whatever I'm working on. So I can, you know, it doesn't really take a lot to be able to make pretty much anything that you need. Unless you're going for more hard surface stuff and maybe you're getting into box modeling, then you want to grab your Z modeler brush and some other stuff, but you know, I got all those handy down here as well. Gabe asks, are those cylinder doges? And the answer to that question is sadly no, they are not. If you guys don't know what a cylinder doge is, it's a dog that you don't know where its neck, and it doesn't have a neck, it's just head, body, and it's just all the same diameter, like from cheeks back. It's just a cylinder. They're the best dogs. They don't live past like 3 years old typically, but they're great. It's my favorite breed of dog. My roommate Austin has a cylinder doge. It's great. Okay. So we started to get that cavity in there more so with our inflate brush. Hopefully you can do the same, and we can kind of fix this shape. Let's move our light around here, just a tad. Awesome. So we can start to just get a little bit of a different perspective as light falls on here. So I'm just trying to clean up some of this stuff, jumping around, as well as gonna start to worry about this hooded shape here. So we lost our poly group, which is cool. And by cool, I mean not cool. It's on the other side. That's because I used Subtool Master Mirror. But that poly group's not very clean anyway, so we can just redo this. It doesn't take that long to create this now that we have done it once. It can be difficult to get in there though, so just be careful. Another way you can do this is use your transpose tool. And that actually worked a lot better than I thought it would. Holy crap. Normally it's not quite that nice. But I'm just going to stick with what I got here. This is what I need. Okay, so we can kind of, you know, size this bad boy up. And, whoa, quick save. You can kind of try to figure out where exactly these shapes are. So about there down, and it's pretty much straight down with like a little bit of a kink in it towards the midpoint there. So maybe like a 10-15 degree angle on the bottom portion there. So we can mess with that. We can grab our move brush and pull that in. So let's, we got a transpose for reference there about where it was. Start to do that. And what I want to do is I actually want to get it as flat as possible. And then once it's as, or not flat, but straight up and down. And then I'll kind of create that little kink in there. And I'll show you guys how I do that. There's a couple things that I apply to my move brush. So like backface masking is very powerful. That's a good one. But then there's another one that I'll show you right here in a moment. It's called AccuCurve. And it is probably just one of those, you know, awesome ZBrush secrets that you don't see too often. So we'll do that here. So I got my move brush, I got AccuCurve, and off the top of my head, I can't remember where AccuCurve is. It's somewhere here in the brush menu, maybe under your samples. Nope. Maybe under curve. Wow, I'm a genius. So you got your move brush, AccuCurve, and what AccuCurve does, as long as you don't edit your curve in here and just work with the default, if you look here, when I pull, it creates like this little point. And it's really good for creating like spikes on a mesh or anything like that. But it's also very good for kind of pushing in a shape like such and getting a bit of a harder kind of transition there. So look at that. We can get a nice little kink in there, and mine is a bit exaggerated, but that's a pretty subtle shape that's going on there that we're kind of able to represent very well. And we can kind of use this to start getting some more of these shapes in here. And they don't need to be awesome and perfect, but we can, you know, start to represent some of these things. And like I said, those are pretty exaggerated, but we are getting closer. So I think looking back now at my anti-helix as it comes down in here and blends into your, you know, your ear canal there, this shape needs to be pushed in. It needs to kind of flow in a bit more. You can maybe tell a little bit better from this image that it's not quite so flat like I have it here. So we can turn off AccuCurve for our move brush, mask off. That was a terrible, terrible curve. Mask off this shape. Try to get that. Try to get this as well, just a little bit. That should be plenty. Good and plenty. The worst candy ever made. If you like good and plenty, you're probably a serial killer. This is a fact. So, from here, mask off some stuff. Smooth some masks. And, you know, I could actually just, use my transpose tool. So do it like that. Really just soften that mask, use transpose and push that in a bit. Maybe even use rotate to try to get it a little bit better. I think that's looking a lot closer to what we want. So, like I said at the beginning here, you know, there's a lot of shapes and folds and all this stuff overlapping on an ear, and it looks crazy like the first time you look at it. But as you start to work and dissect it and do more and more, it becomes a lot easier. So, you know, we're getting closer. We're almost there. Good and plenty equals serial killer confirmed. Yes, this is fact. Gabe, I mean, I wouldn't outright ask you, but do you like Good and Plenty? I think I might have to kick you out of the stream here if you do. I mean, that could be a serious problem, a serial problem. All right, so let's go back to pushing this guy in more and more here. You can start to get that flow a lot better. I'm just going to smooth out some of those sharp kind of transitions that I created with the AccuCurve Move brush. A very helpful tool. And we can start thinking about getting this shape, this anti-helix curve here, to go more up and down at this angle. So ours is a little off, which is totally fine. We'll get there. All in good time. So let's go ahead and just use our move brush, and I'll just kind of push that up in there a little bit and in. I'm just very lightly smoothing because I don't want to mess up all that work that I did. Like I said, the smooth brush is like, wow, thank you for destroying my entire mesh, smooth brush. You are just the most helpful tool. So be cautious, be careful with it, use it sparingly, and if we can, maybe try to push this in a little bit. And let's grab our light. Let's get a top light here so we can start to see some of this stuff. Looking at this shape here, we can see that our fossa is not the correct shape that we want or need, as well as just like this down here, which I kind of just did very quickly and roughly to kind of clean up some stuff. We can start cleaning up this as well, and I'm noticing more kind of abnormalities on my mesh. You know, there's some garbage bag here that we can clean up, some of this on the helix as well, and kind of some general upkeep, but this is kind of the big one that's jumping to my attention right at the moment. And this kind of looks garbagey, so let's do that. Adjust our light a little bit more. Another way you can kind of, you know, if you've been looking at your mesh for a while and you can't tell, what do I need to do next? You can grab a different material. Helps a lot, in my opinion. The basic material, the basic material is a pretty good one. I used the basic material for a very long time. I actually love the basic material. But then I kind of worked on this my own material for like a year, and eventually like kept modifying it until I got to what these two materials are right now. So I have like a clay material. This one just has like a blue kind of rim light or shadows and rim light, I think, as well as like the clay appearance. And then this is the same one, but just all in black and white. So I pretty much work with this one most of the time. That's my favorite material. And then another good one to spot like garbage on your mesh is, well, first of all, matte cap red wax, because anything that you make in this material if you can make something look good in this material, then you know that you are solid. You know what you're doing in ZBrush. Most of the time it makes stuff look like garbage just because it shows all of your abnormalities and deformations in your mesh, and it makes it so like it really points stuff out to you, which is why it's good to use for like if you need to check up on some stuff and see where stuff is. But matte cap white cavity is also really good for this. It kind of starts to show this stuff even more, and we can see like all this stuff over here and all that. Like, it just lets you kind of read your surface a little bit better. My clay material, I think, does a very good job of that as well, but it has a bit more balance in terms of like actually being an appealing material that you can just use for general use as well as rendering. So again, clay tubes, our favorite brush. That plus trim dynamic work pretty well. We're getting pretty thick. Getting pretty thick up in here. So we might want to, you know, adjust some of this. I'm just making some quick, very small general changes just to clean up our forms and make it fit like more of what this ear would look like from the front view. Unfortunately, we don't have that view though. But just knowing kind of, if you have some other references up in front of you, I highly recommend just get a front view of an ear as well. And if you can, like a 3/4 one will help out a lot. Back view if you can find it. It's hard to find good references though, which is why I said, you know, take pictures of your own ear and use that. That typically works pretty well. Unless you got some weird janky ears, then, you know, maybe don't do that. I actually haven't looked at my ears too much, so they might be weird and janky as well. So don't feel bad if your ears are weird and janky. It's okay. We all got some weird janky ears. And this shape needs to kind of flatten out more as we get down here. So I'm just gonna adjust that. Push it in a tad so we can get more of a tubular shape coming down here. Janky and hairy ears. Yes, that's right. That was actually my nickname in high school. Janky Harry. That's what they called me. It's a rough childhood. So I'm just trying to look at this from as many angles as I can. This still looks too thick to me, which isn't a huge deal because we can adjust that pretty quick with a transpose. But it's good to kind of rotate around and look at all that stuff as you go. Well, we got a lot more done in this stream than we did in the last one. The last stream was just pretty much me talking the entire time and answering questions and showing off what I could. And, you know, I pulled up a character and I wasn't like too concerned about getting very far on it. And it was like a little lizard. I don't know if you guys saw that last stream. It's on my channel if not. But, you know, it was just answering a lot of questions and trying to... not really concerned about like actual sculpting, unlike this one where, you know, we've actually, you know, we got a decent ear going on here, so we got some actual work done this time, guys. Again, if you guys are working on an ear, if anybody is, go ahead and tweet it at me. If you got something going on, tweet it at me on the tweeters at Follygon. Whoa. Don't pick up your phone while live streaming, because as soon as I picked it up, I got like 6 new notifications. Maybe my phone's just garbage. All right. So that's looking pretty close. Sub a few parts here. Can make a few additional corrections. If you guys have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments or in the chat here right now. I'll do my best to answer what I can. So we adjust some other shapes here, make a few more changes, and then I think we'll call our ear kapoots. And we'll do this. So I was saying, in the last stream that we're going to start doing more regular live streams, and I mentioned this briefly at the beginning of this stream as well. But I've been spending most of my time, working on my ZBrush Quick Start course, which I've mentioned a few times here, as well as on my channel. So just as I, try to finish that up and get that done, it's taking up most of my time. But as soon as I am finished with that and start kind of pushing out that content, which will be here soon, I'm going to start kind of more consistently live streaming, so you guys can come and hang out and ask questions, and we can kind of just learn and do some stuff together. So right now I'm trying to do like once every 1 week or 2 weeks or so, and I don't really have a schedule quite yet, just so I can kind of my schedule's like not super set in stone every day, so it just kind of depends on the day. If I can do it, I will, but if I can't, hopefully no hard feelings, but I will let you guys know when I can. If you follow me on any of my social media channels, they're all down in the doobly-doo. You can find out if I'm going to live stream that way. Or if you, I think if you subscribe to my YouTube channel, I think it notifies you when I'm live streaming, as well as like when I schedule a live stream, which I typically do like 1 to 2 hours before I do a live stream. So if you want to know that way, you can just click the subscribe button as well, which is how I like to do it for the people that I follow. Then you can also see and know, when I post new content on my channel, because I don't only just live stream. If this is your first time hanging out with us over on my YouTube channel, I have a bunch of content that I release pretty regularly. I do, a bunch of 3D models, I give out some brushes, some new materials, all sorts of stuff like that. Let's see here. Helion said notifications are on. Cool, sweet. I think that's like the bell icon on the subscribe button. I think if you click that, you can. I think I thought by default they were on, but sorry about that. I'm no YouTube master. Gabe was saying not known for reliability. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words. Glad to know we're on the same page. We'll see what we can do about that. We'll wait for the course thing to come out, the quick start stuff. Then we'll have a lot more time for this. All right. So what you guys think? What do you guys think of this ear? Is there anything else we want to do while we're here? We got a few more, a little bit longer here. So if there's any other kind of changes we want to make, we can start kind of copying a lot of the, shapes that we're seeing in terms of just, general kind of abnormalities that wouldn't fit like an artistic, perfect curve like we have sculpted here. I like to use, like I said, that AccuCurve function with move, and that's like a pretty cool way to get that kind of stuff in there. I enjoy using that. So you guys should play around with that too. It's a pretty good one. You can also see like this is blending into the side of the head, and that is something that we could do, but right now I just kind of have this as its separate tool. So we would normally want to do that. So definitely be aware of like this kind of connection to the side of the head there. So it's not just like an ear floating in space. You want to be able to connect all that, and we would probably want to, you know, push some of this in. I'm just using a standard brush to do that, and can adjust some of that. And we could blend this in. What do you guys think? Do you think we should connect it or just kind of leave it separated here? We can mess with it a little bit. Looking at some of these shapes, you know, we still got a little bit of a ridge here. You can see the highlight, and that is what we want, but maybe not so much in that general area. Maybe pull it up a bit. I'm just using a pinch brush to kind of divert the surface a tiny bit so that we can try to copy what we're seeing here in terms of what's going on. Another thing we could do is we could paint this, throw on some quick poly paint, which would probably be a good idea. I can show you guys some cool stuff. There's some materials and stuff that we can try to get to replicate skin. If I was going to paint this and then try to render it in ZBrush, what I would do is I would get multiple render passes with probably a couple different materials, and then blend those in Photoshop. So that's what I used to do, but I haven't done it too long. I've been relying too much on Skin Shade 4 just for more stylized stuff, but a really good material that you guys can grab just by Googling it is the ZBrush Viewport Skin material. It's created by ZBrush. He has a blog. He hasn't uploaded to it in quite a long time, but this is just a really good material that we can kind of, let me see here, MRGB, fill object, and then from here we can kind of, well, start to mess with this color. I like to use RGB at a very low intensity. Let's see here, 10 is probably good. And we can fill object. So if I fill object right now, that's going to fill my RGB values by 11%. So if I put black here, it's going to fill it with 11% black. So that's pretty useful. So we can try and get this closer to a flesh tone, looking a bit sickly right now. So let's get, you know, some general kind of pinks in there. Get that a bit closer to what we see here. Another way that we can do that is for spotlights, you know, actual purpose. Spotlight, I use it as a reference tool, and I think a lot of people do. But you can also use it as, and we can see here, let's move that, scale it up, try and get that aligned. Scale down. We'll get it eventually. We got a doorbell ring. We got a visitor. It's probably just a package. So with this, we can see that actually and they're already driving away. They like ran. Jeez. Let's real quick, so I don't lose this angle before I paint some stuff here. Movie, timeline, show. Click on the timeline, and now when I move my mesh, I can snap it back by clicking on my timeline. So very useful stuff. So let's adjust some of the shapes here just at our lowest subdiv. We'll do our best to kind of, whoops. And that's why you lock that view. we can start to get that shape even closer, as well as down here. And that's actually pretty close for the rest of this. You know, this could maybe be pushed in a tad, which is what I was kind of trying to do with that move AccuCurve. I just didn't do it enough. So we're pretty close here to what we had in our reference. We're not exactly spot on, but close enough sometimes is. So let me see here. Awesome. So let's, I don't know why I moved that out of the way, because I'm big dumb. What we want to do, how much costs this on what you are working on? I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. If you're talking about the software, ZBrush. ZBrush I think is like, somebody tell me, is it like $850 for the software? It's been a while since I bought mine, so I don't exactly remember. But ZBrush is like a one-time purchase thing, and then you get all the upgrades forever for free. And hopefully that doesn't change. ZBrush gods, if you're listening, please don't do that. I'm a poor boy. Don't do that to me. So yeah, let's paint some stuff, which is, like I said, what this is meant for originally. Uber says no, that is not what you meant. Are you talking about? Oh, my Cintiq, my actual tablet. This guy. Let's see if I can move this. It's actually on an arm right now. Not to like hide my face or anything. Hopefully this doesn't come off the table. That would be embarrassing. But yeah, so you can see that. This is how I'm working right now on my Cintiq. So this tablet, 2400. I honestly can't remember. Somewhere around there. If you go down in the description, there's a link to my kit. And it says my gear, and it's kit.com/Follygon/gear. Go to that link, and you can actually see all the stuff that I use. Sorry if you can't hear me. You can see all the stuff that I use to work here. So like my microphone, my gear, the books, the anatomical models. Get a boy butt. I got the girl one too. We won't show her. No boobs allowed on stream, guys. It's a YouTube rule. No, it's not. I actually have no idea. Anyway, let's paint some stuff on her. Let's do it. So, turn our spotlight projection back on, and I should just be able to, yeah, all right. And you're actually gonna see here, we're gonna get something really funny. We're gonna get the text from the image because it's a stock photo, which is fun, but not what we want, which is okay. So I'm just doing this again, but with 100% RGB value. Yeah, Cintiq 27 QHD, that's the one. Yeah, it's cool. So you can find that down in my kit thing. But yeah, that one's like one of the more bigger, expensive ones. I would recommend starting off with like a bamboo tablet or something like that, in my opinion. So let's play with our materials here. It would be cool if you could, well actually you can blend between two materials, but in the viewport it's really not super necessary. So this is Skin Shade 4, so we could try both of these. Let's leave this one on, and that looks pretty awesome right now. For now, and we'll just use RGB. And I am going to just use like a very low RGB intensity to kind of, oh, I have spotlight projection still on, so it's not working. Now it should work. So we can kind of clean up a bunch of this stuff that we got going on. And let's turn the opacity up here so I can kind of get a better image of what this looks like, better idea. Look, we even got some hairs, guys. We got our hairs. Yay. So we don't actually want those, nor do we want these lines. Start to kind of get some of this shading in there. So that's just like a really good way to get like a quick base coat if you're using a reference image. Typically I could like start out with that, and I just normally use it to sample some colors. You can press the C key to sample any color. So if I press C right now, it's going to sample my document. If I press C right now, it's going to sample that button. So now my color is red. So you can really actually just sample anything in ZBrush. It's very useful. Use it quite often. So we don't want to, the problem here is that we ended up painting highlights and shadows, which is not what we want. We want our actual 3D model to kind of produce those shadows. It's okay if you want to like exaggerate some of it a bit, can be useful, but for the most part here, we want the shadow to be casted by our light and all that. So if I were to click BPR, well, one, it would take quite a while to render because I had upped these settings. So give me a second. I have my rays really high, and I just made them super high. No, we don't want that. We'll do like 11. And doing a quick BPR here. Do as that crawls across the screen. We'll see what that looks like. So yeah, I also have my shadows very soft and very weak right now. So whoop. Just get an idea of what that looks like. It's also not a bad idea to render your work as you are going along, so you can kind of get an idea of what that's looking like as well. And we have X symmetry turned off again. We are very good at doing that, aren't we? We'll just delete the other ear. Where is the lamb sauce? Sick name. Says sup. Just hanging out, doing some sculpting. Painting now for this ear. So we're about finished up here with our little demonstration. But if you missed the stream or want to go back and watch anything, it'll be up on my YouTube channel tomorrow, or within like about 24 hours or so. So let's go ahead and clean up some of that just a tiny bit. And make sure we get rid of all these, lines from the stock photo. We definitely don't want those in there. So this is again the ZBrush skin shade material, viewport skin material, and that is free from his blog. You can check it out. But all in all, Skin Shade 4 is a pretty awesome material as well. It's what most people use, and it's also going to let me kind of see what this looks like. It may not look super great right now. That's because we haven't rendered anything, and this is like a terrible render settings that I'm using here. But, it gives you an idea of what that looks like. This material is all right, but I don't like to use like 100% of this material if I do plan on using it at all. It's just a little bit too strong for my liking. It's very like reflective and wet, but that's not always a bad thing. It's very good for, a render pass. Mess with this just a tad more. And I'm sorry, lamb sauce, you came in at the tail end of the stream, like I said, so I think we are at a point where we can call this finished. Well, we could play more with painting, but I think that was a pretty good demonstration for our purposes here. And I can turn off my poly paints just so we can take a look at the ear here and flip between those. Let's Shift S, drop it on our canvas, and we can see what that looks like. So that was I mean, that's pretty much it, guys. As far as everything that I have for, just all the tools and all the stuff that I use for sculpting, just pretty much everything. Just all these tools down here. Helion, there is no water. That's like that's the clock. Yeah, there's a little bit of water left, but I think we're pretty much finished here with our ear, and I don't have much more time here looking at the clock. So I hope that was useful for you guys. I hope you guys were able to kind of, some of you maybe follow along. We had a lot of people kind of come in here and ask some questions, and I appreciate that. So hopefully you guys learned something from this. If you guys did work on an ear or just anything, whatever you're working on, I'd love to see what you guys are working on while you're streaming with or hanging out on the stream. So just go ahead and tweet that out at me if you have an image or screenshot or whatever, at Follygon on Twitter. And I will see you guys in the next video or stream. So thanks for coming, guys. Yes, I will post a picture of my ear hair. Probably not. All right, I'll see you guys later. Peace out.